Hey, what's up guys? It's Rick with the Digital Divide. I haven't made a video in a little while. Life has been very busy recently, but today I want to talk about Warhammer 40k. It is one of my favorite franchises, and today I want to talk a little bit about its history, about what makes it so cool, and where the franchise is headed. So what is Warhammer 40k? The way I like to explain it is think of Dungeons and Dragons. If you combine that fantasy style and concept with a board game, I think that's kind of what Warhammer is. It is a game that you play, but the difference between Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer is that in Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of the gameplay is up to you. A lot of that takes place in your imagination, whereas Warhammer is very much based in physicality. So everything starts with you choosing your faction that you want to play as, and then you go out and you buy these pieces. These are the game pieces that you'll use for your army. You then hand paint every individual piece and you really customize it and make it yours. So your army looks the way you want it to. It is very unique to each player. And eventually you'll build a massive, enormous army that you will pit against another player on the playing field.
A single model to a very high level, you can spend an infinite amount of time, or if you want to paint to play, so you will paint your models and then get them on the board as quickly as you can do that as well. That's really kind of the beauty about it. There's no really definitive answer for that.
Because you invest so much of your time into building out your army in this game, people are really attached to it. There's actually a channel called Miniature Wargaming where these guys came together and built a 30,000 piece set of Warhammer to play against each other. It's so cool.
I spent 60 hours playing one board game. Over 10,000 miniatures were used. This has never been done before, and I have the old man pains to prove it. What you're seeing right now is an actual game that people play. Crazy, right? This is Warhammer 40k Apocalypse. The players are called wargamers. They could literally be anyone you know, and I'm one of them.
Warhammer 40k is the most popular miniature wargame in the world. It is particularly popular in the UK, but it's popular in the US as well. The first rulebook was created in 1982 by Rick Priestley. He created the initial rule book, although he co-created the game itself. Now, he started off working for Citadel Miniatures, and Citadel Miniatures focused on making miniature figures to be played for Dungeons and Dragons. Now, the manager of Citadel at the time, his name was Brian Ansell, he asked Rick to develop a medieval fantasy miniature war game that would be given away for free to customers, and the point there was to entice them to buy more miniatures. Dungeons and Dragons did not require players to use miniature figurines, so they couldn't rely on that business. It was optional. And at the time, most people didn't use figurines when they played Dungeons and Dragons. And even when players did use them, they rarely needed more than a handful. Warhammer was the first commercial miniature wargame designed to use proprietary models. Before that, you could just use anything, really. The wargame rule sets prior to Warhammer basically let you use any generic model. So Rick's side project at Citadel turned into what would become Warhammer. Now, it started off being called Warhammer Fantasy Battle, but then later was shortened to just Warhammer, with the catchphrase being the game of fantasy battles. And it was a lot of fun at the time. So what if you're not into board games, and what if you don't want to have to go through the hassle of painting all of those parts? It can be expensive to buy everything that you need to do that. Well, Warhammer spreads across all kinds of media, including video games. One of my favorite video games is Warhammer 40,000 Dawn of War. This is an RTS series that is exceptional, but my favorite's got to be the Space Marine series. Space Marine 2 just came out recently and it was fantastic. If you like Gears of War, you would absolutely love this series because this is where Gears of War got most of its ideas. If you like the idea of like chainsaws attached to your weapons, guess what? Gears of War took that from Warhammer. If you like the huge, bulky linebacker space marines in gigantic armor, just brutally killing alien invaders, then guess what? Gears of War took that inspiration from Warhammer 40k. Warhammer exists in comic books also. Marvel just put out this Sisters of Battle series. I picked up all of them. They have some amazing covers here. And then Todd McFarlane actually put out a line of toys based on this comic series. I picked this one up here. Now, Warhammer, as far as comic books are concerned, got its start in a series called Inferno, where they covered fantasy stories, including stories from the Warhammer universe. And it eventually branched off into its own comic book called Warhammer Monthly, and I still have issue 0 in my personal collection. Now, McFarlane makes all kinds of toys for Warhammer. If you go onto his website, in 2024, he released a series of new toys, including this Titus figure from the game, which is really cool. His head looks a little bit weird, but, you know, if you put the helmet on, it looks just fine. He also made this really cool Iron Warrior figure. Now, Amazon has actually picked up the rights to the Warhammer TV show, and it's going to be turned into a series starring Henry Cavill, who is a huge fan.
So let's talk about what you guys personally geek out about. Henry, let's start with you.
Specifically, which universe, or just?
I mean, just anything.
Oh my goodness, here we go.
How long have you got?
You've got so many and I've got none.
Yeah,
Like,
I was like, how much time do we have?
Listen, I'll sit here all day listening.
Ruling out The Witcher.
Yeah, not The
Okay.
Witcher. Okay.
I mean, the easy answer is Warhammer 40,000. That is my jam. I have been into it since I was 10.
What's your army at the moment?
Custodes. Yeah.
I'm going Necrons next
No,
year.
wait. Oh.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Were you
Shall we-
into?
Yes.
Were
Great.
you into this before, or is this a new thing?
Let's just assume that anything nerdy I've been doing for a good 30
Oh,
years.
wow, we could talk for hours.
Yeah. No, so yeah, that's my jam, and that's the stuff I do in my free time.
That's amazing.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for me today. As always, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about the upcoming TV show and if you think it's going to be good or not. Warhammer is such a cool franchise, and it's so much fun to get into. I wish I had more space to do all the figures. Until next time, that's going to do it for me.